The second leg of the PGA Tour's Las Vegas swing coming up this weekend. It is the CJ Cup at Summit. The first time the PGA Tour has been to the Summit Club. We're going to break down this course, break down a no-cut event, hallelujah, and get you set for PGA DFS this week in the CJ Cup. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, CJ Cup coming up this week. How are you doing today?
I'm good. We get some no cut action this
Thank
week.
goodness.
We get some stud golfers this week. So I mean, after our head-to-head last week, I think you and I both could really use a no-cut event.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was rough. 4 of my golfers missed the cut, so I presume that I lost. Yeah,
it was bad, man. Like,
it was.
I felt good about the guys that I used. I thought that they were guys with floors, whatever, but I thought they had good ranges of outcomes for that type of format where it's a head-to-head type event. They did not. And the problem is a lot of the guys who torched me last week are guys I'm interested in using once again this week. So I know that I shouldn't overreact to a cut. And that is a great way to build bad lines, overreacting to 1 week. But I feel okay in saying it makes me uncomfortable in going back to guys who hurt me last week. Despite there being a no cut this week, it's still going to be a little bit of a sore feeling heading back to those guys once again here.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about this constantly whenever we have events where the winning score is going to be somewhere around 20 under and scores go low. It just jacks up the variance. Like the cut line last week was 5 under. So if you don't go 5 under through 2 rounds, you miss the cut. And you could go 2 under twice and miss the cut. And that's difficult.
Yeah.
For any of these golfers. Now it's easy for some of the golfers who again are at the lower end of that range to score well on easy courses because they're the best of the best. We should have scoring this week, but we also have the no cut, so it's kind of a crisscross of strategy there.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for sure. We're going to break down the implications of the no-cut event and what the course looks like and more to get you set in just 1 second. But first, a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts, because not only do we have our weekly NFL podcasts on Monday for the recap, Thursday for the preview, PGA each week as well. Also NHL via Tom Vecchio. The Daily Deke is back with NHL season launching up. The Daily ISO just around the corner. So a lot of incentive to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, hit subscribe and also leave us a rating and review because it does help us out quite a bit. Also, the Sunday Million for NFL Week 6 is already posted over on FanDuel. It is still $1 million to first place. The entry fee, it's just $5. Again, you can turn $5 into $1 million with the FanDuel Sunday Million to get a chance at $2.5 million in total prizes. Just go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's dive into the course breakdown here for the Summit Club. It is 7,431 yards and a par 72. And of course, this is not the typical location of the CJ Cup because being held in Las Vegas again this year due to COVID-19 travel restrictions. And this is the first time the PGA Tour has been to this course. No course data, no course history and stuff like that, but we can at least take a look at the course, which you'll do in a second. But first, the key thing is no cut event, 78 golfers in the field. We can't go full D-Gaffy because if you get a guy who finishes 60th, you're probably not winning a lot of money there, but it does help. And I will say that for sure. And it does alter the way we view golfers and roster construction for this week. So Brandon, when you take a look at the breakdown for the Summit Club, what stands out to you as being impactful for our lineups?
Yeah, so it's a par 72, over 7,400 yards, and the average green size coming in at 6,580 square feet. So it's pretty long. It's a par 72, so we get that extra par 5, so helps with scoring, helps with potential eagle chances, but also more specifically birdie chances. And we want birdies on FanDuel because birdies lead to fantasy points. So I think the overall takeaway from what I'm seeing is that scores are going to go low once again. There are large greens. That correlates a little bit weaker with strokes gained approach than usual. So that's something that I'm going to try to tweak in my process. I finally had the time to dig into that kind of data. So iron play will still be my number one stat for the week, but I'll be a little bit more open to the golfers who do everything else well and maybe have like lukewarm irons. I'm still never going to target golfers whose irons are really, really bad relative to the field. There is a mix of short and long holes on this course. Three of the short holes are short par fours, which, yes, can help shorter hitters, but at least anecdotally, and I don't have, you know, player type splits on uh, types of holes like short par fours, but anecdotally, short par fours set up well for guys who can hit it really far. The fourth hole that's really short is a short par three of 138 yards, so that's not really going to benefit the shorter hitters necessarily. Maybe it does if they're all better like wedge players, but that's not really what we're looking at here. And then there are still three long par fours and a long par three of 225 yards. So long par fours going to benefit longer hitters. Long par threes, longer hitters are going to be able to get more loft. So kind of what I'm looking at from a hole by hole breakdown is that distance should matter. Looking at like a ratio of fairway acreage to course yardage, seems like the fairways are pretty wide for how long the course is, which sets up again well for distance, kind of negating some accuracy. So I'm I'm looking for golfers who still have good irons, yes, but who launch it and make birdies. And the greens are bent grass this week, so you want putting on bent grass if you have that. But again, distance, irons, and birdie or better rate.
We might be a tiny bit different here because I did go strokes gained off the tee as opposed to distance, just because there are those shorter holes you alluded to. I was reading through a great course primer over on numberFire.com, written by some fool named Brandon. But reading that, it did seem like I do want some guys who are not just selling out for distance. And off the tee does overlap heavily with distance. So I'm still getting distance in there, but I didn't want to cross off the guys who might be accurate as well. So I went off the tee. I think that birdies are better gained is a key thing for this week. Like, I really do want to emphasize that, given it's a no-cut event. We want those scores to be low, probably going to be a low-scoring event too. So I think that even though we're differing slightly on distance versus off the tee, I think that the emphasis on getting birdies, like more so than usual, I think it's always key, but I think it's even more key this week. I think that's kind of the key overlap we've got there, is that birdies matter a lot this week.
Yeah, and I mean, like we all probably have heard this a bunch of times, but a bogey and then a birdie is worth more FanDuel points than two pars. So you're going to need birdies to climb up the leaderboard. You're going to need birdies to avoid falling to the bottom of this field. And all the research I've done on optimal lineups on FanDuel from a PGA standpoint show that generally in stronger fields and no cut fields, you use more of the salary cap for optimals, which basically means value plays are not as safe as we might think ostensibly from a no cut event standpoint, where you can't really just load up on golfers and say, well, they're not going to miss the cuts, so I can roster four of the superstars and two guys who I've never heard of. That's just not the right way to play it. We need a little bit more balance this week, even though it feels a little bit scary. Although I will say we have some value golfers in like the low 8,000 range who have a lot of appeal. So I'm going
I
to
like one
talk
in the
about.
high 7,000 range. I'm not sure if you like them yet, because I've not asked you yet, but I do like one guy down there.
I probably could talk myself into some golfers with a seven in front of their salary. So again, I'm going to talk heavily about a balanced lineup approach for the week, but that doesn't mean 9,000 to 11,000 and nothing outside that. It's just more really not rostering the golfers in the low 7,000s.
And I think getting access to guys in the mid range is attractive in this event, because you're getting a lot of guys who have realistic win odds. Like 2% to me is realistic. Like if they've got 2% win odds, that's realistic. And if you get more guys with 2%, that's not too bad.
Win odds are very low and dispersed and pretty even for me this week in my sims. Lots of golfers rating out pretty similarly. So I believe nobody maxes out at above 4.5% right now.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that and talk about what that means and get you set for our favorite guys in each tier. Of course, there is no course history, but again, we did discuss what kind of golfers typically do well here. So let's talk about some current form and talk about golfers who are coming in playing some good golf. And I think that Rory McIlroy, it's a pretty nuanced discussion because our most recent memory of Rory is like, seeing him at the Ryder Cup. But also before that, Rory was starting to pick things up with the approach play, had some issues during the FedEx Cup, but there's a lot to take in with Rory, and it's kind of hard to figure out what that means this week. He's 11-4. What do you see with Rory right now?
Yeah, I want to make sure that I talked about at least one of the Ryder Cuppers or like superstars who haven't played much, if at all, since the Tour Championship over like the past 4 or 5 weeks. I'm not looking at the Ryder Cup performances to figure out current form just because that's such a unique format. That applies to a lot of the top of the field, including Dustin Johnson, uh, JT, or Justin Thomas, if you're not in the know. Xander Schauffele, Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, and Rory. So lots of kind of absent form for these guys. So I think it's fascinating to dig in and at least make sure that we're not overlooking some stuff. But of those guys, I think Rory has the most interesting, or is the most interesting talking point, just because he's been kind of tepid for the majority of 2021, but then turned things around in the FedEx Cup playoffs, was fourth at the BMW, 14th at the Tour Championship, which you'll take. He just really kind of struggled and was emotional with the Ryder Cup. So a lot of talk was basically that Rory might not play until the spring, just take some time off, but he's here. So again, I think he's the most fascinating. Now, he does have 2 top fives in the past 3 months and leads the field in strokes gained off the tee over the past 3 months as well, according to Data Golf's true strokes gained numbers, which does adjust for field strength. So you're looking at off the tee. I'm looking at distance. We know Rory fits both of that. We know Rory can score well enough. Maybe the case you make against Rory is, even outside of the off-course stuff, is that, Rory at his best can just stripe the irons, and if they're bigger greens, might matter a little bit less. That could be something that I'm over analyzing, but with a course where I don't really know anything, I'm at least trying to take a stand. So do you have interest in Rory? And kind of a follow-up there, do you care at all about the layoffs for some of these like studs? I kind of care, but not a
Yeah.
ton.
I mean, it introduces more variance, but variance isn't always bad. So I guess like maybe you could care, but like I'm not sure what it would do directionally, because maybe like they had the summer, the grind of like the FedEx Cup playoffs combined with the Ryder Cup. Maybe the time off was good. Like maybe that could be a pause. So I don't know which direction it goes
Yeah.
for it to. So maybe it just makes the range of outcomes wider, but I'm like I'm bump them up or down
You're not
as a
assuming
result of that.
what all of these golfers are going through?
I mean, like that's the tough thing too with Rory specifically. I know that
Yeah.
you were asking about that jokingly, but like it
Yeah.
is tough to know where his head's at. And like I empathize with like what he's, like that's tough because we know he cares a lot. And we've seen that from Rory, and he's pretty honest about that, which is cool. But I think the fact that he's here, maybe that's like a positive. Also, he is a birdie maker. We know that for sure. Like you said, he fits the course well. So you asked if I had interest. I would say yes. Will I get to him this week? Probably not, just because I think there are other guys I like more around him. But like, I'm not like crossing him off immediately. I just don't think I'll get there because I like other guys more. But I'm excited to see what he does. I hope he does well for him, just because I think
Yeah.
that it'd be nice for him to get a good event under his belt. But I can feel good for him while not having my line, just because I think Rory's fun to root for.
Yeah. So I think for me, I'm not going to get to Rory himself. Although he could wind up being an amazing tournament play for the week if people are a little bit worried about him, just because he could, in theory, fit the course really well. But I'm with you. I prefer some other golfers in the 11,000 range to Rory. So, I kind of wanted to talk about him again, just because we have some of these golfers without a lot of recent events under their belt, and I don't want to like overanalyze that, especially for golfers who do take some time off. So someone like Xander jumps to mind, where he doesn't really always play a lot. He'll kind of pick and choose and play some tougher events. So I feel like most comfortable with Xander. I know the
Yeah.
salary's not quite the same as Rory with that $400 difference, but probably ultimately not going to get to Rory myself.
I think I'm on the same boat there. So let's talk about Sam Burns a bit lower, not different context to talk about Sam Burns, but the field's getting tougher as we see these Ryder Cup guys coming back, which does complicate the form for Sam Burns, but he's really good right now. He got that win 2 weeks ago, but he followed it up with a 14th at the Shriners. He gained 8.2 strokes tee to green there. Gave back 1.2 on the greens, as you mentioned last week in the current form section. He lost strokes putting when he won too, but did it again last week. But just really good tee to green play again. Burns now finished top 21 in 6 straight events. He has a win in there, runner up, 8th place finish. So top 10 in half those and top 2 in a third of those. Burns is now 4th in Data Golf's true strokes gained query over the past 6 months. Also leads the field in birdies or better gain the past 50 rounds per Fantasy National. So he grades that well when you adjust for field strength. He's making birdies. He's 10-8. How are you handling Sam Burns this week?
I like him. I think he's a very justifiable play. I probably won't get there a ton because of the great finishes and just a presumption that he'll be popular because we have Tony Finau at 11,000. And that's one of those where come Friday, am I going to be kicking myself for going Burns over Finau? Maybe. So it's less to do with Burns, more to do with the assumption that he'll be a more popular or will be popular because of the hyper recent form. Although if I'm looking for birdies and someone who just launches it, he fits. So like it's nothing to do with him. It's more about a kind of a game theory approach on this one.
So if you take popularity out of it, is he someone who would fit like a cash game build for you because the form is great, because he makes birdies and stuff like that? Or are there just guys you prefer straight up without accounting for popularity more than him?
I mean, he's totally fine. I have him 9th in my combo model, which accounts for lots of stuff like long-term adjusted form, the stats I'm looking for, the hole by hole fit for the week. He does actually rate out a little bit better than Finau from that regard, but
Yeah.
that's one of those where like if I have 10-8 or 10-9 and I can't get to Finau in a cash game lineup, I'm cool with Burns. Like that's where I
Yeah.
am with him, but probably not someone I want to build around just under the assumption that he'll be popular.
Yeah, I think that for me, he grades that as being second in that tier, like that around 11,000 to 10.5 tier below Victor Hovland. I like Hovland more. But I'd probably put Burns a hair ahead of Finau personally. It's not a big gap by
Bet.
any means, but I would say it's
Bet.
Hovland, Burns, Finau. You want to do that one
Yeah, I'll take Finau.
versus Burns?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll do that one. That's
no
fine.
point straight up.
Uh, how did last week go for bets?
I won 2 of them.
Out of 2?
3. 2 out,
Okay.
2 out of 3.
Okay, good. I'll take 2 out of 3. That works.
Hey, for me, that's a historic upset.
I
Of
need
how our
anything I
head-to-heads
can
usually
latch
go.
onto. I had a bad betting week last week, and my bobble hat was hideous, both in the NFL side and the PGA. So I'll take whatever I can get. Going 1 for 3 in PGA head to heads, I'll take it, man. This
Yeah.
is all I got right now.
Well, I know my lead in the NFL bobble hat is not safe.
Better not be, because I need to rally, man. I need it real bad. But yeah, I think Burns is number 2 for me in that tier behind Hovland and Finau. I think all 3 are really good, and I'll probably be in this tier a decent amount because I do like you said, kind of having a bit of balance. Like one guy at the top and then hitting this range with my second golfer. I think that's pretty attractive for this week. Maybe if I use like a Johnny Vegas, something like that in the 7,000 range, I can get to a third guy up here. But I think overall it's a good tier, and I'd like to be here a decent amount. Let's move to your second current form guy, Mark Leishman. You've been talking about him a bit now. $9,100. Golfing really well, but may not be super sustainable. What are you seeing with Leishman right now?
Yeah. 9,100 is a salary you want to see for someone who has 2 top 5s in consecutive weeks. But, I've come around on Leishman. That's why I've been talking about him more. And now that he's actually had those finishes, I'm a little bit nervous, which probably sounds a little strange. But if you've been listening to the pod for a while, you know what's about to follow right now. And it's because he's been putting the lights out. He's gained 7.1 and 7.5 strokes from putting the past 2 weeks, which is pretty unsustainable. Now, the positive, and I'm not going to take this away from him, is that he did gain at least 3.5 strokes tee to green in each of those. The combination of those numbers led to a top five. Like he top five because he was amazing with the putter and was good tee to green. I'm not downplaying that part, but if you give him more average putting, so for him, it's been around 1.3 strokes over his past 20 events, and that does include the 2 outliers. So, let's take those 7 to 7.5 and scale it back to his average. Instead of those top fives, we're looking at like top 25, top 30 finishes. It's not fair to do. It's in his range of outcomes to putt that well. But with a more neutral putter, Leishman would be, 25th, 30th the past 2 weeks. So I don't want to be over eager with Leishman. Again, we know what the putting is. His putting also, if you look back in his like event log, has a lot of really bad putting rounds too. So you want high variance putters. So I'm not trying to like knock Leishman for hitting the high end of his variance, but it's just kind of lukewarm to positive tee to green with super great putting, and that's kind of worrisome. So where are you with Leishman? Did he pop for you at 9,100?
No, I just think there are other guys there who grade out better. Like 91's not a bad range. Like
Yeah.
going back to Paul Casey, he's around there. So Casey is there. I think that like Aaron Wise.
No.
What? Sergio?
Same salary.
As who?
Coke Rack, baby.
Oh, no. No.
No.
No, I mean, I like Coke Rack, but like.
All right.
I think the Coke Rack in Vegas narrative might have gone against us.
Defending champ. Different course.
The Coke Rack in Vegas narrative has gone against us. I think we got burned last week. So I'm still on Coke Rack, but not going to volunteer that freely.
I won.
I don't care. So Coke Rack, Casey, Sergio's right there at 92. Aaron Wise,
Captain America, Patrick Reed.
Like honestly, Taylor Gooch is not totally out of play. He's not good off the tee, but like he's
I like Taylor Gooch this week. But
yeah.
All right, Coke Rack. I think I'm talking about him later. I'll sell you on Coke Rack by the end of this.
No, I don't have to sell me. I just don't want to like talk like.
Okay. I'm saying we're both saying it's a good range.
Yeah.
So
and I think that Leishman's not at the top of that range.
Correct.
So when I'm getting in that range a lot, I'm okay not prioritizing him. Finishes are cool. Good putting is cool. I think I can get that out of other guys too, though.
Cool stuff. He's also, it's early, but he's tied for the lead in tags according to fansharesports.com.
With?
Colin Morikawa, Mav McNeely, and Johnny Vegas. So 2 year you're the chalk man this week. And Sam Burns.
Who was the chalk boy?
Sam Burns is it's early to shake out, but if people are talking about those 4 specifically.
Imagine not using Johnny Vegas in Vegas, though. Couldn't be me. Let's talk about Aaron Wise. One of the guys I mentioned in there as being someone I prefer over Leishman in that like around 9,000 range. Wise, $8,900. Seems to be playing pretty good golf right now. He's gained only 6.1 strokes tee to green in 3 of the past 4 events. One of those was during the FedEx Cup playoffs against a pretty similar field to this one. And he's doing it in different ways because Wise gained 3.3 on approach last week at the Shriners, but at the Sanderson Farms, he gained 2.8 off the tee, 5.8 around the greens. He's got multiple routes to grading out well from an overall strokes gain perspective. The putting has also been better recently, though it's hard to tell if that'll stick or if it's just kind of some, good events. Wise, not the longest off the tee, but does rank 12th in birdies or better gain the past 50 rounds. So are you more tempted by Wise than Leishman? And how does Leishman or Wise grade out to you relative to a tier we both don't mind?
So I like Wise enough. I wouldn't put him in like the top 4 around that salary. What's his salary? 89. Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't know if I can go up to like Paul Casey at 94. So that's not.
I would say 92-ish is probably more realistic to be a comp.
Okay, so for me, Probably Max Homa,
Okay.
Neiman for sure,
Okay.
Tringali for sure,
Okay.
and then like Gooch and Wise are probably about the same for me. So it's less to do with him because I like what I'm seeing. Former rookie of the year, so like we know the potential's there, and it's okay if there were some struggles. If he's finding some stuff, which seems like he might be, the putting long term is really hard to trust,
Yeah.
making the as you alluded to. So for me, probably going to put him in that like fourth or fifth range among guys in that similar tier, but also someone I'm not crossing off. So probably not like I don't want to say it's chasing it because that's not fair.
Yeah.
Probably not going there though.
Okay. That's fair. I think that we're seeing him relatively similarly based on the guys you mentioned.
Okay,
So
can I
I
get you a head-to-head bet on Wise
versus
Neiman?
no, I like Neiman more. I agreed with
Tringali?
you there. No, I agreed. I said I like the list you put above him.
Gooch?
No, I like
So,
the list you put above him.
okay. All right. All
Come
right.
on.
All right.
Stop trying to bait me.
All right,
That's
dog.
bait. That's bait. Let's take a look at what the bookmakers are saying for this week. And similar to Brandon, they're viewing things as being pretty flat in terms of the win odds for this week. Dustin Johnson, the favorite at FanDuel Sportsbook, he's 12-1. Justin Thomas and Xander Schauffele, both 13-1. Colin Morikawa is 14-1. Then there is a tier drop down to Rory McIlroy at 18-1. Jordan Spieth is 20-1. Then there is another tier down to Victor Hovland at 27-1. Sam Burns is 28, with Sung J M and Scotty Scheffler at 29. Tony Finau and Louis Westhazen round out the top group at 30-1. So there are clear tiers here where we have the top four guys in that top tier. Then there's a tier of McIlroy and Spieth, and then a jump down again. Do you think that the tiers from a DFS perspective are similar to the tiers we get for the betting odds?
It's flat with the betting odds. I feel like it's really hard to narrow down who to like most from a DFS standpoint. I do have someone who jumps out, and unsurprisingly, it's Xander Schauffele, just because I love what he can do over 4 rounds guaranteed with his balanced game, where he can stay in the mix. The issue for me with Xander is that he admittedly doesn't like birdie fests, but we also did see him finish runner-up last year at Shadow Creek, another Vegas track with the same architect, Tom Fazio. So, um, that's he was 18 under there. I don't know if I said that, but I think like the flatness of this and just what we know from an optimal standpoint historically, we should be okay. Kind of avoiding the chalk. If it's going to be Morikawa, I'll just not play Morikawa, even though I see the case for him. So I do see it really flat. My win odds see it really flat. So it's really hard to take much of a stand at the top.
Yeah. And I think that I'd agree with that. I think that the other thing that I see is it's hard for me to prioritize Dustin Johnson at 12,000 when I don't think there's that big of a fall off.
Yeah.
And we talk about tiers that implies fall off. I don't think there's actually a huge fall off. Like between DJ and Spieth, I don't think that's actually a tier. So I think that to me, I view the betting odds as being as overselling the discrepancy between the top of that top tier and Spieth specifically. I think that the fall off there is not as big as the betting odds would imply. And I think that to me, I do want to get one of those top six. I'll say top six because I do want to put McIlroy and Spieth in that discussion.
Yes.
But then I'm okay getting just one of them and then dipping down to that second tier for my second golfer. Is that kind of where you're at too from a roster construction perspective?
That is most likely what I'll do. Singling out Xander and Spieth right now is the guys I would most likely target. I feel
I
like
put Morikawa and Spieth is my two.
Yeah, again, I would kind of think that Morikawa is trending toward being a little bit chalky. People seem to like really love Xander always, but also JT at these no cut events. And DJ being the most highest salary just typically correlates with being the most popular. So
Yeah,
there's that angle. But yeah, one of those guys plus then drop down to like the Finau Hovland range is going to be my sort of baseline assumption lineup.
Same thing for me. So let's talk about some movement here. Which golfers' odds have moved since things opened yesterday?
Basically everybody's. So I'm going to focus on the guys whose odds have shortened instead of lengthened, because the majority have lengthened a bit. But Colin Morikawa, your boy, Morikawa Bunga, 16 to 14. I think that's
He was
relevant.
actually 17 at one point.
Well,
So he's actually moved a little bit more.
He was 16 whenever I found it. So
just saying, the people are all in on America's hero, Colin Morikawa.
Yeah. Scotty Scheffler, 31 to 29. Paul Casey, 50 to 41. Mark Leishman, 50 to 48. So that's small, but that's, again, kind of going against the grain of everyone else lengthening and these guys are shortening. Taylor Gooch, 65 to 55. I love to see that. Maverick McNeely, 80 to 65. Alex Noren, 100 to 80. Charlie Hoffman, 100 to 90. And then Cam Davis, 120 to 100.
So I'm guessing the Leishman stuff is just a reaction to the good finishes, probably.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I also think that his odds are a bit shorter than they should be to begin with. So I would, if you are someone who likes to align odds with salaries, I'd be skeptical of Leishman. Casey moving a lot is nice. I would be there either way, but makes me feel less of a donkey for going back to a guy who burned me last week at least. So that's good. It's encouraging. Which lower salary guys have odds that stand out to you?
So golfers with salaries of 9,000 or lower on FanDuel with the best win odds on FanDuel Sportsbook include Taylor Gooch and Kevin Na at 55 to 1. Not sure what Na's situation is.
I was going to say, is he confirmed? There's no tag next to him. This should be good.
Yeah. Joaquin Niemann, 60 to 1. Cam Tringali, Russell Henley, Maverick McNeely, 65 to 1. Adam Scott, Aaron Wise, 70 to 1. Harold Varner III, Alex Noren, 80 to 1. And then Charlie Hoffman and Jason Day are 90 to 1. Of those, the guys who stand out to me are Gooch, Niemann, Tringali, and Hoffman most.
You mentioned McNeely was getting a lot of buzz before. He kind of fits the archetype you had discussed where if approach play matters a bit less, he may benefit because he's pretty good elsewhere. Any interest in him or no?
Some.
Yeah.
Partially from the standpoint of decent bent grass splits, above average birdie rate. I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure he's been on I know he's friends. I'm pretty sure he's friends with the no laying up guys, and I'm pretty sure I heard him on a podcast kind of know that his irons are lagging like that, and that's kind of what holds him back. So again, if that ends up being something that's relevant this week, that bumps out McNeely. But that being said, he's been pretty solid lately, so he might be a little bit more popular than I would like. But again, nothing really against him, especially for a salary of $8,600.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move now to weather. There's nothing to discuss. So why are we here? Not sure. Weather's good to go. I should live in Las Vegas. I think that's the takeaway here.
That's what I tell people when they try to make small talk with me about the weather. I'm like, there's nothing to discuss here.
The fallacy in this argument is you actually talking to people, and I think we both know that's not happening. So let's move now to our player picks here for week number. Oh my goodness, nope. We are not doing NFL. Nope. Wow, player picks for the CJ Cup at Summit. Brandon, take it away. Who are you targeting in the top range?
Yeah, I know how you feel because the amount of times I have to stop myself from saying golfer, like this golfer on the NFL shows, is maddening. So.
I'm gonna in Antonio Gibson fan graphs daily.
I got NBA coming back soon too, so
it's gonna be great.
I'm gonna be
all. How many rebounds for Antonio Brown this week?
Yeah. I'm gonna start with Xander, which does mean that we're gonna overlook someone that we both have some overlap on in our Venn diagram with who's Jordan Spieth. Because I think he's number 2 for both of us, if that's right.
Correct.
Okay. So I still prefer Xander. Again, he's been on record saying he doesn't really like low scoring events. or high scoring events. I never know what people call that. I call it like going low if you're around
Yeah.
20 under. But did finish runner up at Shadow Creek last year, which again, same course architect, was 18 under. You like that? Just couldn't best Jason Kokrak. They're like again, with the birdie numbers, he's still above average for this field in birdie or better rate over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. It's the no cut event, so you can bump him up. Won the Olympics, and we know that he's long off the tee and that he putts well on bent grass. So the only nitpick for Xander is that he just has said he doesn't really prefer Birdie Fest, but that's about it.
That was actually why I had Morikawa above him initially, was because of that. So he's not a guy who tends to like feast in birdie fests, but I think that your adjustments to that are correct. I was gonna go Morikawa here, but we hadn't talked really about Spieth and why we like him. I think we'd talk more about Morikawa. So let's talk about Spieth here briefly as being my first top guy. Spieth is $11,600, so $200 or $100 more than Morikawa, but he's the kind of guy you want in a birdie fest. Ranks third in birdies or better game the past 50 rounds. He's also third in bentgrass putting the past 100. And you mentioned the big greens, a lot of putting chances for Jordan Spieth. Could make up some ground there. Obviously, the off the tee play is never great, but you'd rather have it be a distance test than an accuracy contest for Spieth. If you look at Data Golf's True Strokes Gained query, ranks second there the past 6 months behind just Louis Westhazen. So I think that for me, if Morikawa tracks to be popular, which it sounds like is the case right now, I am very okay just pivoting to Jordan Spieth as my preferred guy up there. What are your thoughts on Morikawa and Spieth?
Morikawa, I'm fine with. It's just more of a factor that I like some other golfers a little bit better. So I'm not going to nitpick him. With Spieth, we know he's amazing on bent grass. We know that he's great at making birdies. And I have a database running of PGA Tour courses that they've played. It's up to, I try to include just the ones that they play consistently, but I have 48 with acres of fairway data. So again, 48, and this course this week ranks 7th. So should have wide fairways, which helps Jordan Spieth, who for the improvements he's made with his driver still can kind of get lost a little bit. So
Yeah.
I think for me, Spieth is the clear number 2, and he was in consideration to go above Xander for me.
Okay, cool. Who else do you like in this upper range?
I'm going to go with Tony Finau. I like your guy, I think, a tinge more, who you're about to talk about, but overall, no issues with Finau. He fits what I'm looking for this week, and this is going to sound really repetitive for me throughout the rest of my player picks, but I'm looking for guys who hit the ball far and can make birdies, and that is Tony Finau in summation. He has positive bent grass putting splits as well. The putting overall is on mostly an upward trend since the start of 2020. Dipped back down a little bit like in June, but is trending back up. So we've seen the best putting from him. He made a lot of clutch putts at the Ryder Cup, which again, said I'm not like looking at the Ryder Cup, but if it's Tony Finau making big putts, I'm going to include that in the process.
Tony Finau coming up clutch. You love to see it. Putting the country on his back. So big fan for sure. The guy you mentioned is maybe being slightly higher on is Victor Hovland. He's my second guy. Hovland, I think, has like decent odds leading the field in strokes gained ball striking this week, which is kind of hard to turn down for 10-9. He is third in the field in strokes gained off the tee, fourth in approach, and sixth in birdies or better gains. And the short game is very likely to be rough, but the birdie numbers show that he can overcome that and still go low. Hovland also sixth in true strokes gained the past 6 months. That accounts for the bad short game as well. So I am in on Hovland despite his flaws. Again, my ranking in this tier is Hovland, Burns, Finau. Our bet is Burns versus Finau. But I think all three of these guys are really good, and I would like to be in this range a decent amount.
Yeah, this is going to be a key range for me where I kind of treat these guys as just the secondary studs. So I'm not trying to force myself to get back up to 2 of the superstars. Maybe it works out where I talk myself into a little bit more value and try to get back up to 3. But in that case, it'd be like Xander, Spieth, and one of these guys. But I don't even know what that would look like. But I just feel really good with all 3 of these guys overall. again, for me with Burns, it's less to do with him and more to do with the assumption that he'll be the more popular of these guys. And I don't know if I'm quite there yet where I'm going to put him over Tony Finau and Victor Hovland.
If you use one guy in the high 7,000, if you use Johnny Vegas, sorry, I'll just, if you use Johnny Vegas, you can get to 3 guys in this upper range without using anyone else below 9-4. So that roster construction is pretty viable this week. And it's not a balanced approach, but it gets me access to similar things where I'm peppering guys with realistic win odds. So I think that's kind of the overall takeaway there is I'm okay with that and trying to get to 3 here. Let's move to your the mid salary range and talk about your favorite guy here. It's a guy you seem to like a lot because you slacked me about him like before you sent the rundown for this week. Who is that?
Cam Smith.
All right.
I got the extra flat brim for today in support of Cam Smith week. I'm just big into him for the week, which is usually a bad sign. So just, take that for what it's worth. But leads the field in birdie or better rate gained over the past 50 rounds, or tied for it, actually. 72nd percentile in bent grass putting. Again, I alluded to this. I'm trying to thing where I look at a hole by hole breakdown to kind of see who benefits most from a course setup that way. And he leads from that perspective, which I like to see. And one of the issues with Smith is always that the irons are not particularly great. If I'm playing the angle, and I am, where iron play matters a little bit less this week because the larger greens, then that all sets up well for Cam Smith to go low. So I have a feeling I can actually justify it statistically. So I'm just sticking with Cam Smith.
As an objective viewer of Cam Smith, I can see why you're there. The birdie's really hard to turn down, so I have no pushback here. I know it's based on like a gut feeling, but I think that it's justified even independent of that. So I'm on board for sure. The guy I like here is Abraham Answer. Could be a distance course, and Answer doesn't grade out well there. Did bomb last week, but I don't want to abandon ship yet because despite the lack of distance, Answer is still 7th in the field in strokes gained off the tee. He's 21st in approach, 21st in birdies or better gains. He's a good bent grass putter, ranks 14th there the past 100 rounds. So I think this is potentially just like a thing where I think he's undersalaried because like Answer, not a course fit and coming off a bad event. But I still think that 10,000 is too low for someone who has as many good qualities as he does. So Brandon, do those red flags scare you off of Answer, or do you agree that he's a bit undersalaried here?
They scare me off enough.
Okay.
I'm not going to say he's oversalaried or undersalaried. I think it's reasonable, but given the assumed course stats that matter for me this week, doesn't have the distance. He's usually kind of around field average with adjusted distance, which you can actually check out, of course, on datagolf.com on their player pages. You can go event by event and look and see if he's gaining fairways relative to the field, which adjusts for the field expectation, which is just awesome. So, but in terms of distance, it's usually just slightly negative. So expecting field average distance, which I think in this field would put him behind. So I'm probably just not going to get there myself.
Do you have a head-to-head you'd want, not Cam Smith?
I'd have to look here quickly. So Answer 10,000. I would take. I don't really want to be. Would you give me Scotty Scheffler?
No.
Louis?
What's that?
Louis?
Probably shouldn't give you Louis, but I will.
Would you rather give me Cam Smith?
No. I'd rather go Louis.
Okay.
Let's go Louis versus Answer.
Okay.
So I want some action on Answer. I think I just want to be there. I think he's just a good golfer who's undersalaried. So I'll go with that one. Louis versus Answer, our head-to-head bet. Who else do you like in this mid-range?
I have Jason Kokrak. So be ready to be baptized and get back on the Kokrak.
Yes. Historically, I need to be talked into Jason Kokrak.
Hey, it's Kokrak at 94. That's the Jason Kokrak.
That's the Coke Zone, baby.
Yeah. Defending champ of the event, but different course. I think he's like a mini fee now, where you play him whenever he needs to gain distance in birdies, which is just his general profile. He's been losing some strokes off the tee, which is a little bit concerning and probably is partially why you're not as high on him as I am. But if you look through, he's been losing fairways to the field, still gaining distance. So that's kind of what I want to see for this week. Missed the cut at the Shriners with or great to good, good to great approach play, poor putting. But I alluded to actually, it's not really an illusion. I mentioned the Data Golf player pages where you can go event by event. He's like always gaining distance adjusted for the field. So you love to see that. So for me, I think process wise, Kokrak's showing me pocket kings, pocket aces, pocket queens, and I'm ready to go back to Kokrak in Vegas.
Kokrak in Vegas. What could go wrong except for everything? I
Can
think
I?
I listed Paul Casey first as the guy I liked above whoever it was we're talking about in this range, Leishman. I think Kokrak you could very easily put above Casey. I think I'd still go Casey above Kokrak, but I think both are like at the top of that tier, correct?
I have Casey above him, but you
Okay.
got to the sheet before me, so
So
I
let's
went with
talk Paul
Kokrak.
Casey. I think that we're just going to go in all the guys who missed the cut last week. Casey was at least pretty close to making the cut. He gained 0.7 off the tee and 0.8 on approach. So less concerning of a miscut than what Answer had. Casey lost 0.4 on the green and 2.5 putting. But Casey's actually slightly positive as a bent grass putter. So shouldn't necessarily expect the recent struggles to persist for him indefinitely. Casey second the field in approach, 26th off the tee, 20th in birdies or better gained, $9,400. I think that he grades that really well. I would say he's a cash game play. Kokrak's a cash game consideration. I would say if I have just one guy here, it'd be Casey, but I might have two. So Casey over Kokrak for me. What are your thoughts on Paul Casey?
Yeah, prefer him to Kokrak. Also, still considering Patrick Reed, where we can de-emphasize some iron play maybe. And I don't think anyone will play Patrick Reed this week. But for Casey, the missed cut struggled at Shadow Creek as well. So I feel like he might get a little bit overlooked, but really good tee to green, 94th percentile over the past year with my adjustments, and 81st percentile in birdie or better rate over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. So really easy case to make for Casey, and just kind of overlooking what he did last week.
Very heat checky week to be in on Casey and Kokrak in the low 9,000s, but that's just too low for me. So let's move down to the value plays for this week. Who you got at 9,000 or lower?
These four all feel like heat check favorites
Oy.
as well. So
For better or for worse?
Joaquin Neiman 9,000. I think that's just too low of a salary. Neiman finished sixth at Shadow Creek last year, and again, I'll say it. Should gain distance, should gain birdies on the field, which is what I want. 93rd percentile in distance. Um, very easily could be chalky-ish on FanDuel because of the salary and the good win odds at 55-1, but also has iffy results lately. No top 25s in his past four, so that also could just kind of leave him a little bit overlooked, and I don't want to do that for Neiman this week. I really like him at 9,000.
Yeah, I think that Neiman grades out well in that tier, a guy I feel very good about. One guy you mentioned before in the odds section is Harold Varner III. I kind of like him at 87. He's been riding a hot putter recently, which is not something I want to bank on, but it's not like he's feasting just with the putter. So I'm fine here at 8.7. At the Sanderson Farms, Varner gained 2.4 in approach. It was his fifth time in the past six measured events, gaining at least that much with his irons. He gained 6.7 in approach to events before that stretch as well. The off the tee play has slipped a bit, but he's still at least treading water there. And we know he can do even better when things are clicking off the tee. Varner, 17th in approach the past 50 rounds, 20th in bent grass putting the past 100 rounds. So I can embrace that at 8.7. Brandon, is the off the tee play concerning enough where you are off of Varner this week?
It's partially that. It's partially the great putting
Yeah.
that I'm seeing. Now, again, he's going to gain distance. He has a very clear path to gaining some birdies, but the putting is a bit too good for Harold Varner's baseline, which is typically when I want to like cash out and be disengaged from that. But Like I wouldn't. It's one of those spots where I'm not going to talk you out of him because the putting's been. It's not the only reason he's finishing well.
Correct. That's why
So
I'm there, is because if you ignore the putting, I think that he's fine.
yeah. So again, I'm not going to talk you out of him, but personally, I'm not quite there as much as I am on some other golfers.
Okay, who are some of those other golfers you like down here?
Charlie Hoffman. I think he would qualify as a heat check favorite.
For the past year or so, yeah.
He's close.
Since like late March, at least.
8,200. It's a good salary.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll say it once more. Can hit it far, can make birdies. So that's what I'm looking for. Could lose some value because his irons are really great. And if that is a little bit of a de-emphasis this week, kind of would fall off from there. But I'm also not downgrading guys with good irons. It's more about discounting or like bumping up guys whose like irons are just kind of field average or a little bit lower. So for 8,200, I'm totally there. I also like Cam Davis at 8,100.
Okay, so I am not actively seeking out a low salary guy because I agree with our overall thought process of we still need guys who finish well in no-cut events, and the super low salary guys can't typically do that. But I think that Jonathan Vegas at $7,800 is someone I can use despite not seeking that out. He can make birdies, so I think that's attractive. Vegas ranks 19th in birdies or better game the past 50 rounds, and that accounts for his rough putting. He gets there because he ranks 5th off the tee and 19th in approach. The primary downside with Vegas, so we haven't seen him in a month and a half. His last event was a BMW Championship at the end of August. Gained 1.7 in approach there, so was a decent showing. We don't know what the layoff has looked like for him, but for $7,800, I can dig it. If he's going to be chalky, that would make me very nervous. I would still use him, but I'd probably try to be underweight if that would be the case because there's a very obvious path to failure given the bad putting. But in a vacuum, I like Vegas. Brandon, what are your thoughts on Johnny Vegas this week?
I mean, I can't knock him if I'm looking for golfers who just hit it far and make birdies because that's what he does as well. But is shaping up with a lot of tags on Fanshare already, so don't love to see that. But I think I would much prefer like Charlie Hoffman. Would you take a head-to-head there?
No, I like Hoffman.
What about Cam Davis?
Let me check. No, because like from a median expectation perspective, Davis is probably better because of the putting.
Okay.
So I don't think that's not the right format for Vegas for me. So
okay, I mean, it's not like Cam Davis is the pinnacle of consistency, but
yeah, but like still, neither is Vegas. So I'll finish up here with our win picks based on the odds over at FanDuel.com. I know one of mine. Trying to figure out the second one. Do you want to go first, or should I just tell you who my first person is?
you can tell me. I'm probably not going to go with long shots this week just because it's a no-cut event and it's strong at the top. That's just not historically who wins these things.
I want Spieth.
I can see that. I would have considered him.
Yeah. I think 20-1 is long enough to get me in there. So I'll go Spieth with my first one.
I'm absolutely going Cam Smith, 34.
Okay.
And I'm a little bit nervous about missing out on the top few, but I'll go Tony Finau at 30 as well.
Yeah, I think that works. So like I would have liked Morikawa had we talked about him when he was at 17 or 16. 14 is it's enough of a movement where I'm okay not being as high there. I'm looking for other guys. Boy.
Go answer. You love him.
I don't think he's gonna win. Man.
Justin Rose.
No.
He's 70-1. My gosh.
This is tough. Like Casey at 50 I would have taken, but he's 41 now.
Yeah.
It's kind of a rough number.
It is.
Right. We're doing it. We're doing the Coke rack.
After all that, that's where you land.
It's the number. He's 48. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Finau at 30 is probably a better number. So I feel bad about that, but I'll go with Kokrak at 48 to 1 and Spieth at 20.
You can take Finau as well.
I know, but it's not fun.
It's not.
You have
Finau and Cam Smith.
Smith and Finau.
I got
you got the fun guys. You got the guys.
I got a lot of fun on that team.
Yeah, that's upsetting.
But
at least I won't be mad if you win.
Yeah. Jordan Spieth, Kokrak are fun.
That's very true. You're right. Okay, we're just taking the fun guys this week. Yeah. I think that's the big takeaway, Brandon. Use the fun golfers. What else would you need? Why'd we spend 55 minutes talking about that? We could have just said use the fun guys.
Oh, well, in that case, put me down for Harry Higgs at plus 320.
I don't think you should. I mean, you can. I'm not going to object if you want to change your pick to that.
No, but I mean, if that was the quotient, then we should have just mentioned him. But
all right, that is all that we have here for the CJ Cup at Summit. Brandon, any final thoughts for you before we send the good people off to fill out their lineups?
As always, in no-cut events, don't get careless. We'll have golfers who effectively miss the cut by finishing really, really low down the standings. So don't get overboard with the value. And it can implode. So just be aware of that for sure. That is all that we have here for today. Of course, we'll be back next week for more PGA talk, but also in the interim, we have NFL Week 5 recap, Week 6 preview coming up on Thursday, 10 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. NHL back with Tom Vecchio, UFC via Austin Swaim. I've got NASCAR this week as well. NBA just around the corner. So a lot of good stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Make sure you are subscribed and leave us a rating and review if you like what you hear. Brandon, people have questions for you on Twitter. Where can they find you there? I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13. And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for this week. Good luck to you with your lineups of the CJ Cup. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.